So hello and welcome to this video on the Dannysound Thru EN129 oscillator. Let's check out a bit of what's to come before we get into the features and some patches. Now, Dannysound is a relatively new company with their EN129 and their Cali oscillator, which I'll be making a video for soon. This EN129 is a Thru analogue oscillator, and it's stated as a fully featured analogue Thru oscillator capable of a wide array of tones and timbres, going from rich melodic waves straight into FM craziness. Now, it's a triangle core VCO specializing in this frequency modulation, and we get really gorgeous musical responsive FM, and we can be very expressive and dynamic with our modulation into the Thru linear FM, because we don't get that pitch drift that you do from exponential or log response FM that you see on other oscillators. We can of course do that and exploit that with a log FM. So we've got two FM inputs, the Thru control with the depth control and the input. Log FM, we get a sine, a triangle, saw, pulse with pulse width. The saw has some shaping as well, which we'll look at. A square, we can take this down into LFO modes. We've got a coarse and a fine tune. We can offset the tuning for the Thru response, as well as control its depth. I've got a lot of examples to get through, and I'll keep interjecting little bits of this Thru FM, but we're also going to explore the PWM, the saws, and exploiting other parts of this oscillator, not just the Thru FM. So let's start by exploring the waveforms, the sound, and probably the major selling point, the exciting, different and quite rare thing is the analog Thru FM. And I'd like to start there. We've got a sine wave coming out of the oscillator into the harmonics data so we can see it on that blue trace. Nice clean sine wave. And we're going to check out the difference between the Thru FM and the log FM. I'm going to use the sine wave from this oscillator next to it. And notice that we don't get this kind of inherent pitch drift that we get with, say, exponential analog FM that can take things out of tune and pull the pitch up from where it's tuned to. Get really nice musical FM. I'm just going to play with the rate of this modulating oscillator. It's really easy to tune in nice musical intervals. If I get this sequenced, so I put volt per octave sequence in. And although I like that static modulation, getting the modulation oscillator tracking the same sequence as well means you get a consistent wave shape across that range. So the other thing that the Thru offers us is the chance to be more dynamic with our modulation. But first let's compare the sound of the Thru and the log FM lower down on the module. That's Thru. This is log. Let's try that at a different rate. there's that pitch drift, and you can exploit that and make use of it as you would with any other analog FM. But the Thru 0 offers us the chance to be much more musical with our modulation. So both oscillators are now tracking the same sequence, and have an envelope opening the VCA, letting this modulate the Thru 0 FM. And we can get nice, fast, responsive FM. So let's quickly look at the other sounds and features as well. Have a triangle wave. This also responds well to the Thru 0 FM. Saw wave. This also responds to the shape control, which you can use the PWM input to control, which we'll look at later. We have a pulse output that will fully cancel at both sides. Again with PWM input, and a square. There's always a square. So that's that Thru 0 FM. That's some of the basic sounds. Let's get in some patches and explore this much further. So in this patch, we're going to explore the square and the pulse waves. But first, yes, there's some filtering and delay. I'll remove those. But first, how good does this square sound? Okay, filter wide open. Delay gone. There's a square. Adding those back in, let's check out the pulse output and what we're going to eventually get to when I pull this patch and rebuild it. Totally different tone, almost sounds like a kind of CZ phase distortion or FM-like set of overtones. Now this is audio rate modulation over the pulse wave. So removing the delay, opening up the filter. This is the instro toner next to it, sending a sine wave, tracking the same volt per octave signal into the pulse width modulation. Let's remove the filtering, and we're just going to modulate this with an LFO first. Nice rich PWM. Playing with the rate of my LFO, we can see that on this LED, showing the modulation coming in. Now doing this at audio rate from the oscillator next to it. Kind of alias top end, dropping my filter that's modulated by an envelope. Now getting this to track the same volt per octave signal. Opening up the filter again. Again, closing the filter. It's a really great set of overtones, very different sounding to just a square or a pulse. So here we're going to explore the saw wave output that's coming into the Modex data scope, nothing else going on. But we've got this SR control which is coupled into the pulse width modulation, and this allows us to modulate the shape of the saw wave from this rising ramp to an octave up saw that's slightly lower in volume. As you can see, these kind of pinch in. You hear that lower fundamental drop out as it comes up the octave. And it then goes the other way as well. You can see it's sort of breaking this ramp in half and pushing the sides away from each other. However, we can push that shaping quite a bit further with an external voltage using the PWM and SR input. So with this in its mid position, this is at 0 volts on my input. I'm going to go down slowly towards -5 volts. So that's about where the knob takes us to, the just offset knob on its own. But pushing it further, we get this addition of these square-like harmonics as it creates this kind of line pulled square like edge in the wave. Likewise from 0 volts up to 5 volts. We can push that quite a bit further. Now modulating this with an LFO, we can get some nice kind of tremolo effects that also couple with this change in tone as it shifts up to its mid position with the octave up like effect. So LFO into modulation. Let's add a pitch sequence and see what kind of effect this has. Some nice audio rate overtones to be had. So I'm going to get my modulation source tracking pitch, and let's explore those audio rate overtones with this sequence as well. I'm just going to slow it down slightly. Some really great tones to be had. Very different, very croaky vocal-like tone there. Almost like drum and bass Reese, heavy D&B kind of sounds there. So having been enjoying the pulse width modulation and the SR saw modulation as well, I wanted to just make a patch that uses both of them in stereo. So here's the pulse to one side, and the saw to the other. So these are hard panned left and right. Now the chain takes these two out into independent low pass gate channels. They're then being modulated independently with slightly different envelopes triggered by different gate rhythms. I'm also plucking these low pass gates independently with other calculated rhythms based on this little generative sequence that I've got going. I've got toner doing some logarithmic FM rather than the Thru 0, getting some nice overtones, and you can hear those swelling in these more dissonant elements. It creates an interesting kind of texture that works against just the richer bass of, say, the square wave that we've got on one side. So let's check out this. Make sure you've got headphones on. Again, it's hard left and right, and there's some effects down the middle as well. Let's kill the effects chain. and I'm mixing my modulation. It's both a stepped signal, a sequence, and an LFO, and the LFO is also influenced by the sequence. So lower notes have slower LFOs, higher pitch notes have higher rate LFOs, but the modulation of that LFO is also being mixed right in. Some effects again. Let's take this modulation up to audio rate before we move on. So the EN129 will also function as an LFO, and that's exactly what this button to the side of the tuning control is for. Now it's currently modulating the wavefold on the toner oscillator next to it. Here's audio rate. A bit chaotic, it's not tuned to anything. There it is as an LFO, and the output of the EN129 is the green trace on the Modax data. You can see it's just this rising ramp. Now the blue triangle underneath is an external LFO that I'm going to influence the EN129 with. And there's lots of LFOs out there, but doing things like this to oscillators that offer Thru 0 FM and more ways to control the wave shapes gives you a lot more to play with and really kind of makes this exciting as an LFO as well. So the first thing I'm going to try is using this LFO to the Thru 0 FM. It's changed the shape of this quite considerably. Higher depth of modulation. I'm just going to speed up and you'll see it on this blue trace, the external LFO going to the Thru 0 FM. Taking it up to audio rates, and again you'll see that change on the blue trace. You get this glorious audio rate influenced LFO. It's still this core ramp at the core of what's going on, but with that Thru 0 FM, it sounds like it's almost ripping apart space and time to mess with this LFO. High depths of modulation. Let's call it a diamond waveform, quite a unique one. Now we could also use this signal to influence the saw shaping that we've already looked at. So let's try that. Again, rate of modulation is blue, the output is green. Speed up my modulation. You can still see that saw shape, but it's now just fuzzy and kind of audio rate wobbling around. You can of course try the log FM as well. Much closer to the kind of result you'd expect just CVing the rate of an LFO. As it comes up, it gets faster, down, it goes slower. Still a lot of interesting shapes to be had through the log FM as well. And you can of course mix the modulation, various sources into different things and get some really unique LFO responses from this. Because you have such a good sine wave on the EN129, which we've heard already, but here's a nice low pitched one, you might need headphones to hear it, and it's just going to drone through this patch. Let's try and make some kick drums and some percussion. Now I'm not going to put this into the VCA, which would be the next thing I would need to then control its amplitude to make percussion. We're just going to look at pitch envelopes and modulating the oscillator to get a range of tones suitable for percussion. So first, I have an envelope. We can see its activity on the LED going into the log FM. Now let's turn that up and we'll start to get some kick-like sounds. So suitably kick-like. You'd then want to put this into a VCA or a low-pass gate and then strike or envelope control that as well. But a couple of things and ways that we can control this. First, let's try some noise, and we're going to go directly into the Thru 0 FM. A little bit too chaotic all the time. So if we take some noise into a VCA and control the level of the VCA with another envelope, then go into the Thru 0 FM. We can impart this noisy snare-like tone onto the wave. Great for making sure that your sound absolutely smacks through a mix. It gives it a lot of kind of heavy transient at the front of that sound. A sine wave from toner. And again, into a VCA first. If I was to just go straight in, it rings too long. And once this whole thing is through a VCA, that may be okay. But I prefer to have the tonal shaping to have some shape and life to itself as well. So for getting unique tones and tones that are going to cut through a mix, this Thru 0 FM works great for adding more body and kind of tone and character. So thanks for checking out this video on the Dannysound Thru 0 EN129 oscillator. This is available through Fonk at the link in the description. There's going to be more videos coming with the Kaliosk, the other oscillator from Dannysound, a video using both of them together so you can see how this Thru 0 FM works with both of the oscillators together, and of course lots more videos to come from me. Hit like, subscribe, comment, get your mum to come and support me on Patreon, all the usual patter at the end from me. Thanks for watching. Cheers.